How efficient are you and how efficient is your business? Is your business running at its full potential? Are you not sure and are you curious? This strategy talks is for you. In this week's episode, we're going to dive deep into the world of continuous improvement. From lean principles to cutting edge technology, we'll uncover strategies to transform your organization. Stay tuned. I'll be right back.
Let's strategize together. Let's hear it from an expert. Join the conversation, it's informative and free. You and me, let's talk some strategy. Here's your host, Morin-van.
Hello, everybody. My name is Morin-van, and I'm back with another episode of Strategy Talks. Can you believe it's December? Today's guest and I will be talking about continuous improvements in your business, in marketing, and I can't wait to bring him onto the screen in just a minute. But before we do, I want to welcome everybody who's here with us live. If you're live, welcome. Put in the comments where you're joining us from and what platform you're seeing this on. You might be on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook. If you're watching this on the replay, put hashtag replay in the comments, especially if you have questions, so that myself and my guests can see your questions. Now, for those of you who listen to Strategy Talks as a podcast, I want to do a special shout out to you. We appreciate all our podcast listeners as much as we do those who watch our show on the video feed. So thank you so much for being with us today. Back onto the screen right now with me, who was just in the green room, is Joe Hungerman. Joe, welcome.
Hey, welcome. Welcome to me, I guess. I'm excited to be here. I'm so excited I can't even talk right.
I know. I'm excited that you're here too. And I love that you and I just met for the first time in the green room. If you're watching Strategy Talks on a regular basis, you know most of the people that come on my show are connections that I've known for a while. And Joe and I got connected about a month and a half, 2 months ago through a mutual connection. And I love that. You know, somebody says, hey, Doreen, I have somebody who would be great as a guest. And then we start talking and that's how we connect. And that's absolutely, I don't necessarily love hosting people that I don't know or I don't think are going to be a great guest for our audience. So Joe, as we started talking in the green room, one of the things that we talked about is both of us having experience as later in life entrepreneurs. So before we talk about actually business and marketing, let's talk about entrepreneurship as a more mature person. How did you get into this?
So I took a long and winding road. I started out in business. I was in supply chain within manufacturing and healthcare for like 20 years. And I got kind of disillusioned with it. I eventually switched into tech, and that tech journey kind of led me to working for a startup accelerator that's based out of Boston, and our development team was in Sri Lanka. And that really gave me a taste of the entrepreneur life. And, you know, the more I did it, the more I was like, you know what, I think I could probably find something that I'm good enough at to kind of do this for myself. And that kind of started my journey. I ended up leaving that position. I started a consulting organization. And then about a year ago, I started CI. So I'm kind of a dual entrepreneur. I've got 2 separate businesses I'm trying to get up and going at the same time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's really great. So when we were talking in the green room, you were talking about implementing agile methodologies, and this continuous improvement comes from agile and from lean. So how do these different approaches work when you're talking about a startup? Where, in what areas? Because I know that I'm an agile marketer. So I use agile and continuous improvements and incremental changes and all of those things that we talk about in agile. I use it in marketing. Where have you been able to use it as a entrepreneur? All that knowledge that you have, where are you applying this?
It actually works really well for entrepreneurship because essentially, when you start up, especially if you're a solopreneur, it's chaos. I mean, you're wearing every hat imaginable. I mean, even if you have a marketing background, you got to do the business aspect. You got to understand product. You got to understand customer discovery and development. You have to know all of these things. So having a rooted philosophy like continuous improvement is kind of a catch-all.
Hmm.
It's not really a methodology in and of itself. It's this collection of ways to do things. And it's really a mindset. And that's kind of agile is very similar in that respect that you kind of have to have a specific mindset. You have to think on the fly. You have to be able to pivot quickly. So having this base of understanding of all these different types of methodologies really gives me a grounded sense of how to proceed as an entrepreneur. Like if I'm facing a problem, I can pull a tool out of my tool belt and address that problem with that tool. And that's kind of the way I look at continuous improvement. It's all of these tools that I have in my tool belt that if I need one, I have something there to rely on. I mean, I even do it, my wife and I do it in our personal lives. We have a Kanban board up in our kitchen that we manage our life with. So, we have a backlog and we have things that are in doing, things that are in done, and we do it with everything. So I really live the philosophies.
Yeah. So for those of those of the my viewers, my listeners those might be words that they don't know. A backlog is sort of like a to-do list, but not really. Can you kind of explain it just a little bit what and I can say, guys, it changed my business 4 years ago when I took the agile marketing course, because I would get stuck and then not do something but not acknowledge the fact where I was stuck, right? And in agile we do something where it's a daily stand-up where you say, what did I do yesterday, what am I working on today, but where am I stuck, and acknowledging the part where you're stuck to your team is where you move forward. So it makes sense that as an entrepreneur, you get lots of places where you get stuck. So how would you explain this continuous improvement strategy to somebody who's not familiar with any of these principles? And like, how can you not convince somebody, but how can you say to somebody like, if you have this problem, this is why this will work for you?
So continuous improvement, it's really it's rooted, it goes all the way back to Frederick Taylor. If anybody knows Taylorism, scientific management and all that, it's really rooted in business philosophy. But what it really is at its base is science.
Okay.
So continuous improvement is essentially scientific thinking and implementing the scientific method. Form a hypothesis, test that hypothesis, see how it's working for you, adjust on the fly, do what you need to do. And any methodology really boils down to that. So when we're talking about agile, we're talking about a backlog. It's everything. You have a goal for what you're working on. The backlog is everything you need to get done or everything you think you need to get done to achieve that goal. And you eventually rank them based on how important they are to the goal. And in something like software development, it would be how important is this feature or this piece of code worth, how valuable is it to your customer? If it's extremely valuable, maybe that goes at the top of the list. If it's easy to implement and not as valuable, but you get to get real good information coming back, well, then maybe that goes to the top of the list. In the backlog, you basically move over. And after every iteration or every cycle that you're going through this, you basically reflect back on that and say, did it work?
Yeah.
Are we moving towards true value? And that's really what continuous improvement is about. It's finding the value and making sure you find the value in everything that you do and removing as much waste as you can. Get
Yeah.
rid of the waste, focus on throughput and getting work to move through your system as efficiently as possible.
That's a great explanation. And for those of you who want to like have a visual with that, we just all got the update from iPhone. If you're an Apple user, right? We're at 18.2. That's one of the iterations. Like if you want to like put it into context, what it looks like as a business, it's like Apple doing an improvement and then telling you these are the changes we've made, right? Now your phone is doing this. Now there's AI integrated. I just updated my phone this weekend and there's AI and my calendar looks different. And so those are the changes that you make. And so then you go back to your backlog and go, so what are we working on now? So that makes a whole lot of sense. Now, in marketing, I'm going to bring it to marketing, Joe. This is where a lot of this stuff is where we come to a head. And whether you're a team of one or a team of one with a couple assistants like me, you might be a freelancer watching this, or you have a larger team. The one thing that we run into is that these continuous improvements and these small changes that need to be made are put to a halt because C-suite, right? Because there's a lot of people in marketing, and not everybody, because there's some CEOs that have seen the light and say, yes, you're not carte blanche, but you can do things. But a lot of us have to ask permission to make changes, to get content approved, to get ideas approved. So that is one of the main stumbling blocks for people in marketing, to not being able to implement continuous improvement. So, Joe, I'm going to give you the platform to talk to a CEO that has a marketing team. How can you convince them? And I know this is completely off script because I gave you a bunch of questions, but now I'm thinking, so if somebody is watching that is a CEO or in the C-suite, a CMO, and says, yeah, my team is to come to me for every change that they make. How can you convince them that allowing your team these improvements and allowing your team to be more agile, what is on the other side of that? What do the people that work in that kind of environment get?
This might not be the answer you're hoping for, but this is the eternal struggle. If you talk to anybody that works in any type of continuous improvement setting, getting the buy-in is the most difficult thing, because people see these shiny new toys and say, okay, we're just going to do that. And it'll look good on our annual report. We're just throwing out these buzzwords for people just to get them excited about something, but we really have no intention of doing it, because you have to give up power. And that's hard for the C-suite to do. Like, for continuous improvement to truly be effective, you have to let everybody in your work environment have power to make changes. It's never going to work if you don't. So it's truly cross-functional. You need the input of the people that are actually doing the work to help guide you through this. And convincing the C-suite to give up these sacred cows is absolutely difficult. I mean, I know a ton of people that are consultants in this space, and that's what they struggle with, but they're making enough money as a consultant that it doesn't really bother them. I mean, it bothers them, but at the end of the day, they're getting paid regardless. But if you're working directly in that, a lot of times it requires you to make it a grassroots activity. Like, you have to start from the bottom up. When I first started implementing this, when I worked for a hydraulic motor manufacturer, I started learning all this stuff, getting deep into it. And I ran a team of 6 or 7 people. And it was one of those things where I was just going to do it and ask for forgiveness later. Some people have the freedom to do that, but some people don't, and that's understandable. So really, the root of everything is, if you allow this to happen, if you continually improve now and forever, it's about removing all this waste and getting rid of the junk, and it will eventually bleed down to the bottom line. But it's like I've heard you talk about, and I know you talked about with Mally in one of your episodes, something like content marketing takes time. It's a slow burn.
Yeah.
And continuous improvement is the same way. If you're expecting overnight success or something to catch fire and immediately, save you millions of dollars, it's not going to work like that. It's building blocks, small incremental changes. Eventually you'll get to where you want to go, but you have to be patient. And unfortunately, in our current environment, especially for publicly held companies, they're at the whims of their board and their shareholders, and the shareholders want to see growth, and the shareholders want to see things now. And that just doesn't work that way. So smaller teams usually are better set up to implement this stuff. because you have more direct influence on the leadership, and you can pivot quicker. You don't have all the bureaucracy.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. So if you're watching this and you're a CEO, you're CMO, and you are thinking that you want that continuous improvement, you want the bottom line to be different, you want things to be different, then starting small and learning more about these systems is a great start. And I'm going to ask you in the end, Joe, so stay tuned, everybody, how and where people can learn more about some of these systems, what kind of education you had to get through that. But I love that you said it's grassroots, it started with you. And that's kind of where, for my journey, those of you who know me know this, but I was working with an agile consultant, and one day she sent me a informational thing about an agile marketing class. And she said, there's all this stuff that you're doing for me in social media and how you're helping me, you could implement this system in marketing in your business. And so I took that class, and that has changed everything for me, that workshop, that, how I, my operating system and how I think and how I meet with people. So let's pivot, Joe, to your new venture, because I'd love to know a little bit more about that. What are you doing? One of the questions I had is, what success have you had, but you're still in the discovery phase. So let's talk a little bit about CI. That's the name of your business, correct?
Correct.
Let's talk a little bit about that business and how your, continuous improvement, how that's helping you build that company as your startup.
Okay. So first, let me clue people in on something that a lot of people question me. They ask, what does CI mean? So it's SEE/EYE. And if you think about it, if you think about the letters C/I for continuous improvement, that's where it comes from. And I know you love your play on words too, Doreen, because
Yes,
Morin Media is up there too. I love that.
Yes, for sure.
So my journey to this was essentially, I reflected back on my career. Like when I decided to leave and go do something else, I was listening to The Lean Startup by Eric Ries for about the 10th time. And it's a great book. I suggest everybody read it, but that's off topic. And I started reflecting back on my career. So I spent time, in supply chain. I spent time doing continuous improvement. I spent time as a product manager, as a business analyst, as a data analyst. And I started reflecting on what were the problems I saw in trying to make myself better and make things better. Because I've always had that mindset. I've always loved to improve things. I mean, that's always just been in my blood. And when I looked at everything, I said, learning this stuff was tough. I'm somebody that likes to read. I read 4 books at a time, but not everybody's like me. But having that knowledge not be as accessible as I wanted it to was a real struggle for me. Like I had to read book after book after book, and then I didn't really have a good way to implement, especially if you're trying to do it on your own.
Right.
Back then there weren't a whole lot of tools out there for continuous improvement. Product management was still just Jira and Azure DevOps, and Jira annoys me. So I try to explain to people that CI is the Jira for continuous improvement, but I hate Jira so much that I just don't want to say that.
Hey, I'm with you. I learned in theory what it was like to, about agile marketing. And I literally was there in New York on a 2-day workshop on March 13 of 2020. And then the world shut down. So now I am sitting in my, in my home, working from a home office, trying to figure out how to implement this. So I'm with you all the way. I like implementing it. Learning, reading from a book or doing a workshop is one thing, but learning how to implement is definitely the struggle, for sure.
Exactly. So, after doing all that reflection, I sat down, what can I do to make this easier for people? And that's kind of where CI was born. And what I want it to do is give people the information to learn easily, and then also a system to be able to apply it. So there are a lot of bigger companies in this space. I mean, we're not novel. There's other companies out there. We have competitors, but a lot of them are focusing on the enterprise, where
Mm,
we're really trying to focus at the granular level. Somebody, a director, a manager, just an engineer or marketer that's out there doing their own thing, but really wants to try to implement some of this stuff. That's who we're targeting. So
like
we
me.
want, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we want to give people the tools to learn and then apply as well. We can do enterprises. I mean, the system that we're building is designed for collaboration and document control, version control, all of that, anything that an enterprise needs. But it's also, we want to keep it at a price point that makes it accessible for anybody. We basically say, let's democratize continuous improvement. Give that knowledge, give them the tool sets and information to be able to apply it, and keep it low enough where they don't have to go and ask for capital expenditure approval.
Mhm.
If Doreen Morin-van wants to just, try it out and learn a little bit and see if it's helpful,
Right.
our lowest package is pretty low. And I know we're in a subscription society and everybody kind of just had a collective groan and said, oh, another subscription. But, ultimately, for what we're trying to do, we think it's a very low point where somebody can just expense it on a credit card rather than, having to go through that bureaucracy to get it approved.
Yeah. So I mean, I can tell from my experience that I went through at least a 6-month journey after learning about agile marketing, after learning about, I wanted to implement continuous improvement, but not knowing what tool to use, not knowing how to implement it, not knowing how it applied to me as a small team. And so I love that you're addressing that. I definitely there, even though you said there's, competitors, I do believe that was kind of a hole in the market. That was 4 years ago for sure. I have talked about agile marketing. I've given presentations about it, and people, the question always is, so tell me where to go learn this. Tell me how to implement this, right? I want to bring it to the team. I actually spoke at Inbound in 2022, and that's what people afterwards said. So how do I bring this to my team? Because especially in marketing, um, as a social, and then, not just marketing, social media marketing, we are tasked with all the things that other people don't want to do. If you're in a marketing team, is how social can do that. So while you might be working on a project in the morning, by noon, you've got 3 last minute things that you need to do. So one of the questions that I was asked on the stage is, so if I want to implement continuous improvement, talking about, I had explained the concept of a sprint, working on something for a week or 2 weeks. And I said, well, you can adapt that to a smaller team. So you can, instead of doing, 2 weeks straight and not thinking about everything else, if you have multiple clients, you're in social media, maybe do a 2-hour sprint every day from 12 to 2 on this one client. So you're doing a mini sprint. So is that kind of what you're taking what you've learned and what you've implemented, and now you're making this into something that people can really use in all aspects of their business, obviously not just marketing, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And honestly, marketing is one of the roles that is best suited for continuous improvement because you're already used to doing all the testing.
Right.
You're used to A/B tests and testing out different strategies and throwing away what doesn't work and keeping what does. A lot of roles within corporate America aren't like that. They're not used to that.
No.
So, marketing definitely lends itself well to continuous improvement. And yes, that's what we want to do. But, if you look at continuous improvement as a whole, there's all these splinters. There's all these silos of different methodologies. And a lot of the old guard has kind of put up walls around those silos and said, our way is the only way to do it. And we're trying to take a completely different approach. I
Mhm.
love continuous improvement. I love Lean, Six Sigma, systems thinking, design thinking, agile. I love all of these different methodologies. And I like to tell people, I don't care what you use.
Hmm.
The knowledge and the understanding that continuous improvement, always trying to improve yourself, your business, your organization now and forever, that's the important part.
Yeah.
If you want to use the Scooby-Doo methodology and go drive around in the mystery machine and it works for you, great. We'll look to incorporate that into CI if it's really
Yeah.
that useful. But we want to give everybody the knowledge base of all these different types of methodologies so that somebody can go and say, okay, there's a really big bottleneck in this process. Maybe we should use theory of constraints here. Okay, we're seeing all of this backlog of inventory, and inventory exists everywhere. In software development, it's an inventory of tasks you have to do to get the software done. We're seeing all this inventory. How do we cut out that waste? Well, maybe lean or Toyota production system is the way to go. We're trying to do all this, and it's the improvements we're making are making drastic impact down the line. Well, then maybe we need to look at systems thinking. And I know this is a lot of big terminology, but eventually you get used to it and you kind of understand how these different things work. And it's really that old guard that's really holding those silos. And we really want to aim for the people that are willing to be open, unbiased, and look at everything from a fresh and clean perspective.
I love that. So I cannot believe we're at 25 minutes in. This is an excellent conversation. There's definitely some questions happening on LinkedIn. But I have a question for you. Let's finish this out with a question about how does AI technology, how has it helped or hindered what you're doing in, as a startup, but also in this continuous improvement? What role does AI play? How are you implementing it, and what can we expect to see in 2025?
So technology in the continuous improvement space is a big, scary topic. It took forever for people to even adopt spreadsheets. So we're really kind of pushing the limits on what this old guard is used to using. So, if you go back to the root of continuous improvement, especially if you go back to the Toyota type of strategies, everything is manual. Everything is sticky notes, pencil and paper, and everything. So just getting people up to speed on Excel was tough. And then trying to get people to do PowerPoint was tough. And now we're trying to put all of this into a high-tech system. AI is another extension of that. But there's this concept within the Toyota production system and continuous improvement as a whole. If you go back to the root methodology, and a lot of this is built into the culture of Japan, it's something called respect for humanity. And that's a pillar of what Toyota has used, and that's really built into their culture. So, I've heard you talk a lot about the human connection, making sure you maintain a human connection, let AI be a helper, but you still really need to keep people and at the core of what you're trying to do in marketing. And that's really what we're trying to do for continuous improvement. It's why I always say we're trying to build an AI enhanced platform rather than an AI powered platform. Continuous improvement isn't sexy. Right now, AI is. But we really want to be a platform that puts people at the center of it, that puts community at the center. So there'll be things that AI will help do that, will help make things more efficient, get rid of all the busy work people don't want to do, like writing standard work or standard operating procedures and stuff like that. But it's not going to be taking over and doing everything, because really at the core, continuous improvement is about the relationships you have with the people doing the work, with your team members, with your stakeholders and leadership. And all of that is incredibly important to actually get it done the right way. Because if people think that they're doing this to reduce headcount, they'll smell that from a mile away.
Right.
Where a lot of these types of initiatives fail is people go into it saying, we're doing this to save money. Well, you can't do it. Saving money is a happy accident. It's a side effect of this mentality. And eventually you'll get there. But you really need to keep people at the core of everything, and you really need to build and establish these relationships to make sure that it's successful.
All right. Well, I think that is a great answer, and that is definitely how I see AI. We need to keep humans at. Oh, Joe, where did you go?
I'm on an old DSLR camera, so it shuts off after half an hour.
That's funny. That's awesome. Hey, that is real, guys. We are live and we're doing this real time. So Joe, I'm fascinated. I definitely want to learn more about CI. I know that you just were mentioning it hasn't quite launched. Has it launched or has it not launched?
We're getting close. So
we're getting close to launch.
We're almost in alpha testing, and we have a group of alpha testers lined up. Then we'll
Okay.
go into beta. We're hoping to have a full MVP launch early in January.
All right. So if people want to connect with you, what platform are you most active on? I definitely want to know more about that journey and when it's live and all of that. I would definitely want to look at your tool and see your platform and see what it can do for my company. Where can people connect with you? Is it LinkedIn or where are you most active?
Definitely most active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
We have a presence in some of the other social media realms, but it's really not our core. Our core is LinkedIn. So for the people watching, here are some places you can see me
Okay.
and see CI.
Okay.
So CSEE-EYE dash IO is the LinkedIn handle for
Okay.
those that are just going to be listening to the audio.
Yeah.
Joseph Hungerman is my handle on LinkedIn. And then, if you want to go check out our website and see the stuff we're doing there, you can find me at josephhungerman.com, or you can find CI at CSEE-EYE.io.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, thank you, Joe. This has been a great conversation, and this is very timely, right? We're early December. If you're listening to this on a podcast somewhere in December, or if you're watching this live or watching the replay, if you're like 2025 is going to be the year I am more organized, I want do more testing. I want to get more out of whatever you're doing, whether you're in marketing or you're in operations or HR anywhere in your business, and you're like, I've heard Doreen talk about some of this stuff. I want to try it, connect with Joe, find out where he is in his journey. And I'm definitely want to bring you back on, Joe, maybe mid next year and see how the launch went and all of that. This is definitely something that in my business has made all the difference in growth and scale, in everything I do and how I communicate and how I work with my clients. So, truly think that this concept of continuous improvement can enhance anybody's business that currently doesn't have that in their business. So that's wonderful. Joe, I thank you for being here today with me. And I want to just thank everybody that stayed to the end. Quite a few of you were here. If you've stayed to the end and you've listened to Strategy Talks, we appreciate you so much sticking with us, and connect with Joe for sure if you have questions. Joe, thank you for your time this morning. And I'll be back next week with another episode of Strategy Talks. Bye, everybody.
Thanks so much, Doreen.
Bye-bye.
Bye.